Well, you guys, this is it. We're getting close.
It's the final countdown.
Yup. It's the final countdown. We are getting close to the end of this. In fact, if you look at our slide, it says project is due next class, right? So we want to make sure, our next live class anyway, I want to make sure that we're getting our stuff done. So definitely as you're working today, and then, into the next days that we're getting these final images completed and screenshotting them. Once again, Control Shift and that picture box above the number 6 grades out your screen. You just take your mouse and highlight over the picture itself, copy it or capture it, which will copy it automatically to your clipboard, and then you paste it on in to your art journal, record your time for the day, and make sure you also, while you're there, might as well paste it on into the Hall of Fame too, right? That way we can share it with other people if you want. But that's an option. All right. So our goal is that before the next class then that we're getting all 3 of our images done. Remember, one of them needs to be either primary colors or secondary colors. And of course, with the help of neutrals like black, white, gray. Those are all okay too. Get those in there. Make sure you're filling out your art journal. But don't turn it in yet. Don't turn it in. Often I'll have students turn it in advance, and especially on this first one, I don't know if anyone's ever actually turned it in the right way without having had art before. So don't turn it in. I'm going to show you guys next class how to turn it in the right way so you're getting full points. Okay? So just have it ready to go in your journal, and then we'll chat more about that later. In the meantime, one of the things that needs to be in our journal is our color theory worksheet, but we haven't quite yet finished it, so we're going to want to do that in class today. So go ahead and get that out. If you're wondering what I'm talking about this, our color theory worksheet. Now you can see I've got some stuff already added in there. I cheated. I already had some of it done, didn't I? So yours is going to look more like this. Now, if you don't, for some reason, have yours already, then you can go into the slides and click on it and make a new one. Just file, make a new copy. As a reminder, if you are filling yours out digitally instead of printing it and coloring it in yourself, you will have to add the shapes, right? So I'm adding the shape, and here we go. We can add that on in there, and then I can choose to fill it in with whatever color I want it to be. But for now, we're going to move that out of the way. So you should have so far from a few class periods ago this whole top portion done. Anything talking about primary, secondary, and tertiary colors, we already did. And if you're like, we did? I must not have been here that day. Go back up a few slides. Watch that video. Learn some incredible knowledge. But today we're continuing on. So today we're going to talk about warm colors versus cool colors. We're going to talk about tints and shades. We're going to talk about complementary colors. But wait, there's more. But I'm not going to tell you what that is yet. That's a surprise, so hold that thought. So have this out. Be filling it in as we are going through the information here. So first and foremost, warm versus cool colors. Dun, dun, dun. Here we go. So warm and cool. When I think of warm colors, so they are red, orange, yellow. I like to think of a warm fire. That makes sense, right? Warm colors, warm fire. So if I were to color in a picture of a warm fire, what colors would I use? Well, I'd use red, orange, and yellow, actually. So that's just a way, like a trick for my brain to remember that those are the warm colors. And if you want to steal that trick from me, you go right ahead. You do that. Yes. All right, so then what are our cool colors? They are going to be the colors that are on the other side of our color wheel. So green, blue, and violet. There we go. So I have a visualization for this one as well. Go figure, your art teacher's all into visualizing things, right? Seeing things. But for this one, I like to visualize myself sitting on some green grass under a tree with green leaves, and my toes are dipped into a cool lake, cool colors, cool lake. And it's deep. So that water, that cool water is blue. And in fact, in the places where it's really deep, it actually even looks purple. So that's how I remember my cool colors, that green grass, and then that cool green, the cool blue and purple lake that's nice and deep and Sounds like a great day, right? Have a book in my hand. Actually, whether I'm by a cozy fire or toes dipped into a cool lake, give me a book in my hand. That sounds fantastic. I'm here for it. All right, so here's our color wheel. Once again, there's lots of different representations of it, but I like this one because it has that dividing line, and it kind of shows you like where do we divide our warm versus our cool. Now, that being said, this spot here and this spot here on either side gets a little tricky sometimes. Like there are sometimes where I'm like, is that more green or yellow? Is that a warm color or cool color? Or is that more red or purple? Is it warm or cool? I don't know. And then I just have to do my best job of like trying to see like, does it pull more purple or does it pull more red? And then I put it on that side of the color spectrum. Our color wheel for the cool versus warm colors. So sometimes we're just doing our best, right? I mean, that's life. Anyway, here's another visual of warm versus cool. So warm, we're thinking the fire, we're thinking sun, warm things. Cool, we're thinking water and grass, nice cool colors. So on this slide, this is one where I'm like, yeah, this color right here, the chartreuse. It's like, is it more green or is it more yellow? Because actually I'm noticing on my recording screen, it's pulling to me a bit more green than it actually does on my screen over here. So it's kind of depending on how we're looking at it and maybe the lighting in the room we're at. So sometimes those can get a little bit tricky. And like I said, just do your best job in those situations of like, is it pulling more this way or pulling more that way? And that should help you out. Now, warm versus cool gives a different feel, doesn't it? Like those are the same two pictures there, but one's warm and one's cool, and they feel totally different. The warm one feels energetic, like it's just bouncing off the charts. And the same movement is happening in the cool one, but it seems almost more like a mellow symphony. Like you can tell it's moving, but it just feels smoother, I guess. So it definitely gives a different vibe. Same kind of here. Obviously that's a little different on each side, but you can feel that difference between warm versus cool. And I think we can really feel it here. Same picture, right? Same guy given the same kind of scowling gaze. Looks like he's a model for an eyebrow commercial. But you can tell like in this one, it looks like it's nighttime and there's like just a little bit of reflective light. It kind of has that kind of eerie, cool, chilling factor to it. And in this one, it looks like red hot mad, right? Like, oh yeah, that's intense, that's fiery. Woo. So same picture, totally different vibe. Anyway, what should we do with that information? Well, guess what? We should put that information here. So remember, you will have to make your own shapes, but then fill in your warm colors on the one side and your cool colors up there. You don't need to watch me do it all, but that's what we're doing in that spot. Okay, cool. So the next thing that we're going to fill in is the shades and tints. So a value, when I say a value, I'm talking about the lightness or darkness of a color. And we can add value, lightness and darkness to it with tints and shades. So let's chat about that, shall we? So a shade is when I'm wanting to make the color darker. So if I want to make it darker, the easiest thing I can add to it is black, right? So what you guys should be doing, create a text box up over here if you're doing it digitally, otherwise just write it in if you're doing this manually. And we're going to put the word black in there, okay? And it makes sense, right? Like if there's a shade or shadow on something, it's like adding darkness, it's adding blackness to it, and it gets darker. So like, I don't know how much I can do here from, oh yeah, you can kind of see. So if I'm blocking and adding darkness to my skin, you can see how it's really bright whitish there, creamy, peachy. I do not have a tan right now, unfortunately. But now when I add a shade over it, it darkens it, doesn't it? So that's adding black to it. And you don't need a lot of black. When you're adding black to a color, teeny tiny amounts, because that black is a strong pigment and it'll change it very quickly. So what about our tint then? A tint is when we're trying to make the color lighter. So imagine we have a blue, but I want more like a sky blue or a robin's egg blue. I want to make it lighter than that like royal blue that we think of as our primary color. So in that case, to make it lighter, I'm going to be adding white. So white is, when we're mixing anyway, is usually the less strong color because there isn't the pigment in it. So we tend to usually have to add more of it. So I usually say start with white and then like add your blue to it. Whereas if I was saying to add a shade, I'd start with blue and add a dot of black to it at a time. Anyway, that's for mixing, color mixing. Now, most of what I just said there was truth. But there was like a kind of 1% lie in there. Sorry. And it's just because of how we speak. It's because of how we understand words and we understand what colors are. And so I said, what color would you add to make it darker? And what color would you add to make it lighter? And that word color was a lie in this instance because, in fact, black, now this isn't on our sheet, this is that extra I said there would be. Black isn't a color. Black is the lack of color. It is the absence of color. In fact, if I took a vacuum and I like sucked out all the color and light, like a Ghostbuster, she just coming on in, I'd be left with a void. And we call that void, that absence of any kind of color or light, we call that black. So it's technically not a color because it's the absence of color, but we just use the word color because, I mean, what else are we going to do? Be going around saying like, oh, you know, the absence of color, black. We could. If you want to sound really smart, you could do that. But anyway, we call it a color. It's technically not. Anyway, the next one, white. So white is also not a color. In fact, white is the sum of all colors. It's all of them. Okay, so imagine like a unicorn just pew, 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 and all their colors are coming through the light spectrum. They're all coming through at once. Once it crosses through into that light spectrum, we see white. That's what happens. Yeah, there's unicorns involved in this. Did you know that? Anyway, if you're like, art lady's gone crazy, what's she talking about? Because when I mix my art paint, it doesn't turn white, it turns brown. Well, there's something a little different about mixing pigments, like in paint, versus when we talk about the actual light spectrum and putting them all through there. So that's kind of where that differentiation needs to be made, but I can still prove this point. I can still prove to you that the sum of all colors is white. So let's do that, shall we? Yeah, we shall. Here we go. So we're coming back in here. So I made this video a year ago. We're going to start at 1 minute and 7 seconds in because that's going to kind of show my point here. So let's open that up. Oh, there she is. Okay. Let's skip forward. We don't need to listen to all that. Here we go. 1 minute and 7 seconds. Now, here's what I want you guys to notice. Color wheel. Do you see? Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet. So that's all the colors, right? Our primary and our secondary colors. From these colors, everything else is made, right? Well, technically just primary, but whatever. Primary makes secondary, so full circle. The one downfall of the experiment I'm about to show you here, do you notice how the orange and the yellow, the construction paper that I had to make this with, they were a little dull. Like that orange is not as vibrant as it should be. The yellow is not as, they're kind of dull. So that's part of an issue. Also, I'm using a drill to spin this, and my drill could only spin so fast. So that also is going to play into this. So in theory, if all those colors were like perfect, like the perfect shade of red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and violet, and perfectly shaped to the right exact same equal sizes, and I could spin that drill really fast, it would actually turn pure white. But because I have those slight little tweaks in there, it's going to look a little bit more like a cream and off-white than pure white. So I just wanted to throw that out there to you, but nonetheless, this is still my favorite magic trick that I can do as an art teacher, so let's watch.
Sum of all colors actually being white, which is like, what? How does that happen? Because it's colorful. How do we go from colorful to a blank slate of white? Doesn't really make sense, but that's how the light spectrum works. It's a mind bender, you guys. So check this out. I've got it on a drill here.
There's my drill.
Okay. And it's
We're about to spin it.
See if I can get it. There we go. I want it nice and even for you guys to check out. There we go. Ready? I'm going to really hope that this wheel does not fly off into my camera right now.
Okay, it does take a second to get up to speed. You can already start to kind of, oh. Okay, now it's slowing down again. Hold on.
If I had a faster draw, it would look even better.
And there we go. Did you see it?
So cool, right?
Yeah, yeah, that is last year, Mrs. Simpson. That is so cool. Oh my goodness. I still, you guys, every time I see it, I'm like, yeah, there's the white. It's so cool. I love it. Anyway.
Like you guys,
Oh no, we don't need to hear from you anymore. You've shown your trick. You're good. Okay, so let's pop on back in here. So anyway, just showing you some of all colors is white. Now, one thing that really bothers me about when people use the word tint, a lot of times they use it wrong. Like, for example, if you've ever been to like an auto place, they'll say, oh, get your windows tinted. They're not even adding a white film, you guys, they're adding a dark film. And I'm like, that's not tinted, that's shaded. But whatever, that's what the whole automotive industry uses, so I guess we'll just understand what they mean, but also know that they're wrong. Because a tint is white, not black. Okay, next up, complementary colors. So right here it says complementary colors are. So I'm going to show this to you, but I also want to put it on in here so you can see it in the worksheet. So one thing we need to know about complementary colors is they are across from each other on the color wheel. Let me make this a little bit bigger for you guys. So you should be writing this into yours. If you need to pause it or rewind, you go right ahead. They are across from each other on the color wheel. That's one thing we need to know. And they also make each other appear brighter or bolder when they're next to each other. Isn't that cute? It's like, hi, I'm red, and I look this certain amount of bright and bold. But come here, green. Stand next to me, and now I am brighter and bolder because of you. And green is saying the same thing to red, and it's just like this lovely little relationship. So what are our complementary colors? Once again, they're across from each other on the color wheel, and they make each other brighter and bolder. So let's learn more about that. Okay, why isn't this doesn't want to go away? You go away. There we go. My computer is wanting to do other things than I'm trying to get it to. So complementary colors. Here we go. So first things first, let's talk about the difference between complement and complement. Notice they're spelled different. Like if I look at complementary up here, it means you're like saying something nice to the other person. Okay, like, oh, nice sweater. That's a compliment. Complement is slightly different, okay? So basically with complementary, it means that you kind of like what the other one's lacking, you have. So like you support each other. And so you could even support each other with compliments, right? That's a little confusing. But yeah, it's like they're supporting each other because one has what the other one doesn't. They're opposite of each other. You've probably even heard of that that saying opposites attract, right? It's kind of along the lines of complementary, that what one doesn't have the other one does, and so they help each other out. So our first set of complementary colors across from each other on the color wheel, make each other bolder and brighter because of each other, are purple and yellow. I am sorry to all you Green Bay Packer fans. I'm going to offend you twice in the next minute or so here. These are Viking colors, and that's the way I remember this set of complementary colors. Viking colors. So purple and yellow are across from each other on the color wheel, and they do, when they're next to each other, they make each other brighter and bolder, and I will demo that in just a minute and explain that further. But for right now, on your charts, make sure in those little boxes down below that you're putting purple and yellow next to each other. Our next set, sorry again, Packer fans, we're going with bear colors now. Seriously, all of our biggest rivals. Oh my goodness. But our next set of complementary colors are blue and orange. So we've got the Vikings and the Bears. Great, right? Sorry to any of you that actually are Vikings and Bear fans. Like, truly. I'm genuinely sorry for you. It's a terrible thing. Anyway. All right. So, these, once again, they're across from each other on the color wheel. They make each other bolder and brighter for being together. And finally, we've got green and red as complementary colors. They are across from each other on the color wheel. I can't really think of any sports teams that have the red and green. Maybe there are, but I'm not super into a ton of different sports. So Anyway, one thing I can tell you, the month of December, I can tell you I see these colors pretty much at every shopping center I've been to. So typically to remember this third set, in my head, just think of Christmas because that's what I see. So those are our complementary colors across from each other on the color wheel, and they make each other bolder and brighter. So here's what I want you to imagine. We've got the color purple on the screen here, and it has a certain amount of brightness and boldness. I want you to imagine if I popped a blue circle next to it. And I want you to imagine how those would kind of blend together really nicely, wouldn't they? Like if you could smudge between them, they would blend really nicely. But now if I, boom, here comes yellow across from it on the color wheel, and it's like all the characteristics of purple are opposite of the characteristics of yellow. So when I put purple next to yellow, they're both like, bam. They both stand out really, really bright and bold because they're next to each other. They pop next to each other. They do not blend into each other and kind of like fade away. They pop. That's what I mean by when I say they make each other brighter and bolder. Same with blue. If I put blue next to a green, once again, it would kind of like blend nicely. It'd be soothing. But if I put it next to orange, there it's so they're brighter, each of them together, than they are apart because they're opposite of each other. And then finally, we've got green versus red. Same story. Same story, you guys. So hopefully that all makes sense to all of us. So here's some key terms. Once again, you don't have to write these down, but they're in these slides if you need to get access to them. That color wheel is just simply showing that color wheel of how the colors all come together. When we understand color theory, it just makes creating art so much easier, and we run into less mistakes, especially when it comes to like mixing colors and stuff like that. We know our primary colors, right? That's literally all the colors come from blue, yellow, and red, plus the help of our non-colors, black and white, right, as tints and shades. But from our primary colors, the next generation are secondary colors, and that's green, purple, and orange. And then if we mix again, we've got our third generation, our tertiary colors. And so we just keep blending and blending and blending until eventually we have all the colors in the world. Pretty cool. All right. Then those complementary colors we just talked about opposite each other on the color wheel. They make each other bolder and brighter when they are together. So sweet, right? And versus complementary, wanting to distinguish between the two. And that's just like saying something nice about or to somebody, right? Or the other color. That works too. So complementary colors can complement each other by saying something nice to each other. Kind of fun to watch. Anyway. And then once again, a hue is just another word for like a color, you know, a tint or shade of a color. So if you hear me use the word hue, it is basically synonymous with color. So there you have it. All right. Hopefully that helped you fill out the rest of that sheet. And then as a reminder, just make sure that you've got all of your art pictures done from Pixlr. Copy and paste them into your art journal, record your time, save everything, put things into the Holoframe, and get ready because next class we are turning this in and I'm going to show you step by step how to do that. I will see you then. Bye, you guys.